The stranger asserts that the movie is proceeding as scripted, but I am doubtful. For one thing, there is no incredible revelation, and something else not right, though I'm not sure exactly what. A line is out of place, a cue is missing, I don't know what has occurred. Now the end is here, and so am I, exiled to my Isle of Patmos, contemplating my future. Will I stand in the docket, or will I go out into the world as a prop, purified with the burning coal? I do not know, so I continue to tell you about the end of time, in hopes that the telling will help me uncover the truth. I tell you because you know me so well. I tell you because you are here. I don't expect to stand trial. In fact, I believe that quite soon I will be leaving this place. Maybe law will go with me. Did I tell you she paid me a visit yesterday? She came over from the neighboring island on her sailboat board, slicing through the Laguna Madre like, well, let's just say she was quite a sight. She was quite a sight. I don't know if she was happy or smiling. I really didn't notice her face. She was in a skin bikini, healthy lungs. I don't know how she got past the sea monsters. She came within about 20 feet of the island, cutting a rather nautical turn in the frothy beach streak. What's your name? I called out. La, she said. Then the wind changed, and she headed back to her own island. Her translucent skin reminds me of Allison, except she's not quite so thin, a bit more aesthetic built. Who am I kidding? Her breasts are enormous. My membranes are surging. My DNA is singing. What's that? Yes, now is a good time to delve into one of the story's most beloved supporting characters, Cowboy Roy. He would make a good movie all by himself. In fact, I already have the concept. Requiem for a singing cowboy. You like? In this Panavision Technicolor Western, the retired singing movie cowboy becomes a modern-day Don Quixote. But instead of losing himself in delusions of knight-errantry, Cowboy Roy becomes his on-screen persona, an Old West cowboy wandering a frontier that is no more, redressing wrongs through his prowess with a horse and a six-shooter. Here's the description I put together for the film treatment. About 60 years of age, he was wizened and gaunt-featured, but of a sturdy constitution. A dark handlebar mustache belied his thick belly and thinning gray hair. A strong jutting jaw line punctuated the elongated shadow of his 6'6" frame. He affected the speech of the heroes of the dime novels and old Western movies he enjoyed, regarding both as the final authority on virtually all matters of the Old West. True, he hadn't rode a horse or roped a steer in years, but what was that to Cowboy Roy? He knew he was a real cowboy in his heart. I must admit I like this concept, so much so that I already roughed out some introductory script. Cowboy Roy was shooting the windmill again when the outlaws attacked. It was almost sundown, and the gaunt, bullet-riddled tower cast a long shadow across the grassy hill where he stood. Roy Thornton was just a boy when his father bought the steel windmill at a livestock show in Fort Worth, replacing an ancient wooden model that had collapsed in a cold norther. An avalanche of icicles and splintered lumber raining down on a hapless young bull. Barrel-chested, bow-legged, Cowboy Roy aimed his ivory-handled six-shooter at the windmill's rusty blades, which turned slowly against the fiery North Texas sky. Every time a slug hit, the metal framework rang out like a ranch house dinner bell. Its thin metallic scream echoing across the rolling prairie. The gun shops boomed defiantly every evening over the lakes of Greenwood. There weren't many complaints, though. The luxury housing development boasted only 3 homes and 1 resident, home builder Jack Bryson. Instead of sprouting houses, the remaining 157 one-acre home lots were waist-high in grass and weeds. More vegetation sprouted from giant cracks in the street and their fat cobblestone intersections. And the lakes, actually a series of stock tanks the developer had scooped out of the low spots along Henrietta Creek with a backhoe, had gone jade green with algae. Jack would have complained to the developer, except the developer was his father. Times were bad all around the luxury home building business. Still, the lakes of Greenwood had yet to totally revert to wilderness. The stone-paved intersections and fachwerk clubhouse with old-world clock tower, actually a thinly disguised elevated water tank, made the project look more like a European Disneyland than the Texas you thought was gone forever, as the sales brochure described it. As for the 3 homes, they were mostly contemporary interpretations interpretations of 18th century English manners, two-story neo-Georgian, dumb-waitered, and gaslit, the same sort of exaggerated architecture that was going up in neighboring Dallas and the rest of metropolitan Texas. The project didn't look like forgotten Texas at all. Lying in the trampled grass at Cowboy Roy's feet was Sam, a tailless border collie. The unfortunate animal had showed up on the back porch one morning a few years back, and he hadn't left it since. The absence of a tail hadn't affected the dog's disposition, which was invariably that of a happy pup. He spent most of his days alternating between sleep and chasing the neighbor's livestock, occasionally baiting a bravado-filled bull. Sam would bark and circle around the beast until it began to shake its horned head, snorting and pawing the ground. Such displays served only to egg on the playful Sam, who would continue to antagonize the bull until it finally charged. That always sent Sam bounding across the field, wind in his ears and joy in his heart. He was oblivious to the animal's anger. He thought the chase meant the bull was having a good time. Despite his agreeable nature, Sam didn't care much for his master shooting. Every time the gun roared, he tried to hide from the noise between Cowboy Roy's feet, hunkered down and whimpering softly. "Get along," Cowboy Roy scowled, gently nudging Sam with the side of his sharp-toed boot. "You're a lame excuse for a cow dog, you know it?" "I know, not very exciting, poorly sculpted fluff. This is always a problem for me, my inability to inject a sense of life into a conventional waking world cinematic narrative. I cannot film the waking world. Why? Because it is too slow to capture on celluloid. I try as I may, it inevitably slips through my fingers, a whirlwind of Nazi paratroopers, bleeding walls, and fleshy spiders. So I will not embarrass myself by sharing the rest of the turgid introductory. Instead, I will jump ahead to the action, i.e. the place where the waking world tumbles into the land of the dead." Then he saw the guns. It was only a flash, really a brief shimmer in the slanting rays of the western sun. The flash could have been the faraway windshield of a passing car on distant Texas 114, or a jet on its final descent into DFWA airport. Those were the obvious explanations, but Cowboy Roy knew neither was the true story. He put a hand to his forehead just to be sure. No VI patch, this was real. His eyes shot to a nearby thicket of soapberry trees, the understory of an impenetrable tangle of saplings and trumpet vines. There he saw a glint of sunlight off the polished barrel of a Winchester repeating rifle. It was pointed right at him, and suddenly the air was thick with gunfire. Cowboy Roy dived for cover, skidding palm first into knee-high weed. Great tongues of blue flame leapt from the trees, and the bullets raised puffs of dust all around him. One ricocheted off a rock by his head, dusting his cheek with chalky grit. Another grazed his boot heel, renting it in two. An arrow whizzed overhead, missing him by inch. Crouching in the weeds, he hurriedly reloaded his gun and tried to determine the strength of his assailants. He could tell by the deafening fusillade that several weapons were involved, but all he could see was the smoke from their gun, an acrid black cloud that enveloped the thicket in darkness. He raised his gun to return fire, but before he could take aim, the shooting stopped. Out of the roiling black cloud rode 4 men, each astride a different colored horse. A sandy roan bore a half-naked Indian, a bow and quiver of arrows slung across his dark, shirtless back. He was flanked by 2 black horses, each bearing a large, bearded man in matching buckskin fringed jacket, and leading all 3 was a tall man riding a white horse. He was of a sallow complexion, with sunken gray eyes that stared over the bridge of a large hawk-billed nose. The horse had red eyes and wide, flaring nostrils, and Cowboy Roy thought it looked like the devil's own mouth. The man and his albino horse drew rein just shy of Cowboy Roy. The others lined up behind him. The Winchester lay across the leathers of the leader's lap. "What the hell you think you're doing here?" Cowboy Roy asked, staring up at the tall man. The hot breath of his horse bore upon him. The horse smelled of rotting. The tall man smiled, revealing a black void of front teeth, leaned forward on his saddle, resting an arm across his thigh. "I'm here to whip you senseless," the man sneered, extracting a low rumbling from his associates. "But I can see now you're too old to even bother with anyone. So why don't you be a good old man and drop that gun belt right now and throw up your props?" Cowboy Roy glanced briefly at the other men, then back at their leader. He dusted off his pants with the brim of his hat, a ragged and sweat-stained forebeaver. He now only wore around the home plate. "Get going," he said finally, his voice thick with disgust. "Just crawl back in your hole, and I'll bullet dance you there." The Indian and buckskin-clad rider laughed again, and the tall man looked at him with mock surprise. "Why, I had you figured for a smarter old man than that," he said, again flashing his rotten toothless grin. "You don't want to go and rile us now. We've got you outnumbered 4-1. "That may be true," Cowboy Roy replied, bending down to tie his holster to his leg, "but you'll get the bullet with the period on it." Then the white horse reared back on its hind legs, hoofs pawing the air, and red eyes blazing like jellied fire. The 4 horsemen went for their weapons. Cowboy Roy shot the Indian first, then the 2 men in buckskin, firing from his hip straight into their hearts. The pale rider lifted the Winchester to his shoulder, but death took him before his finger even touched the trigger. The horses bolted, leaving their dead riders sprawled in the dust, blood pumping from their chests. A tight helix of smoke curled from the barrel of the gun in Cowboy Roy's hand. Then everything faded black. Overhead, a large bird circled slowly atop a dying thermal that rose from the hill where Cowboy Roy lay. He thought it was probably a hawk, but it might have been a buzzard. It was hard to know for sure. A large gash had appeared on his forehead, leaving his vision a bit blurry. Even so, he could see plainly enough to know that the men were all gone, and he was thinking plainly enough to know that they had never been there. The bird then slanted off on a long, smooth glide towards the lakes of Greenwood, alighting on the peak of the steep-roofed clock tower. Sam stood over his master, licking his face, but Cowboy Roy wasn't ready to get up quite yet. He just kept staring at the bird. He was almost sure it was a hawk. Poorly sculpted fluff. If only I could reproduce a work, true visionary transformation, a creation worthy of Let Me Love You. That cinematic classic contains colorful text imagery, specifically an alternate history in which the Texas is sovereign nation, and that B-movie imagery is so much more dramatic than I could ever manage, even if I had an A+ budget. "I've been thinking you should make a movie about me. Yes, I know, I said no graven images, but this would be different. For one thing, it would be in 70mm. For another thing, it would be played by a youthful Omar Sharif, my sensitive yet strong voice resonating in THX surround sound. But by its very nature, this movie would be numinous. It would conclude with me consuming myself a hand sandwich and a glass of fermented corpuscles, a multimedia Eucharist. That's good, Messiah, I would say. Actually, the movie I have in mind is based firmly in reality. It is the story of my family and of Texas. For the opening shot, picture a close-up of hands tying brightly colored ribbons into the gray limbs of a leafless tree in winter. The hands belong to Jewel Poe, my maternal grandfather. It is the winter of 1953 in Waco, Texas, and he is in his backyard conducting experiments in color photography. He needs the colorful ribbons because the winter landscape is all gray and dead, just like the black and white photos he's still working with in his portrait photography business in downtown Waco. See, he's using science to bring the dead winter landscape to life. Clever, right? The story is also about my grandfather who is dying from leukemia, and the protagonist is a girl who will become my mother. She is helping my mother, my dying grandmother, take care of her brothers and sisters, my future aunts and uncles, and helping her father hand-color the black and white portraits at her father's downtown studio. Hand tinting, that's what they did back in the day to bring dead portraits to life. The climax occurs in May 1953 when a tornado rips through downtown Waco, leveling many businesses and killing more than 100 people. The tornado destroys my grandfather's studio and smashes into the roof of the old family Nash. It's also the last weekend my grandmother is able to get out of bed before her death. Very symbolic, you like? But most important, the tornado is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. Turns out it actually rips in the space-time It is actually a rip in the space-time continuum, a vortex pulling 1950s Waco through a black hole and directly into the plot line of the present day. I arrive at work the next morning to find I am once again the truth doctor at Valuosity Life Planning, Inc. I learn of this surprising turn of event from Preacher with a Gun, our golf cart driving security guard, and night student at a local seminary. Soon as I pull into the employee parking lot, Preacher with a Gun comes racing up in his golf cart, a sidearm on his hip and a Bible on the dashboard. "Lose your card key? What, for the garage? Oh, that, I don't have one anymore." Preacher with a Gun gives me a quizzical smile and points to my sun visor. Oh yes, there it is. I guess I forgot. I can still use the executive parking garage. Preacher with a gun waves at me in my review mirror as I pull up to the garage entrance and scan my card. The gate rises and I pull in just as I always have. I park my Lexus LS400 in the park space labeled Clark Carrying. Yes, I am back, but how? How did I regain my former position? Overnight? Back in the day, this sort of question would have been a strategic plot point that would be milked for a ridiculously interminable period of time. Of course, the reader would quickly see that the text of the voice of God is somehow transforming everyday events into an alternate reality. This would be obvious to all except for the characters in the story. A protagonist like Clark Carrying actually would be surprised to find that he had awakened to an alternate reality where he was still the truth doctor. How could such a thing happen? What a mystery the protagonist is compelled to solve. So he checks the files in his office, seeking the non-existent evidence of his demotion to technical writer in the LET department and the twin losses of his corner office and park space in the executive parking garage. So he wonders what happened, or rather, what didn't happen. A protagonist like Clark Carrying might muse to himself thusly. Clearly my personal timeline has rolled backwards at least a year, I estimate. For everyone else, though, time continues to move forward. My computer and telephone display a time and save of 7:50 a.m. June 25th, about 14 hours after turning off the computer in my cubicle in the LET department and pulling out the employee parking lot for my commute home. You know what I say, boring, talk too much, do too few. Let us now skip right to the big scene, the one with the prophet who foretells my future as your God. We arrive at the home of the prophet, who we find inside a restored backyard barn, circa 1919, locked in a death struggle with a homicidal Macintosh portable computer. He takes a break from the battle to greet us. Welcome to my island, he says, out of breath and sweating. Pull up a deck chair, help yourself to the tanning oil, but watch out for the brain crabs, they bite. We take a seat on an old church pew. May I offer you a festive beverage, he continues, perhaps with a paper umbrella? No, I understand, you are unsure, filled with doubt. You have purchased your ticket, acquired your soft drink and bucket of popcorn, and taken your seat, yet still you wonder, a rapture movie without a rapture? Is this really for you? Or perhaps you worry it is rather too much for you. That is to say, too much of the prophet. The hard drive inside the Macintosh portable, aka Mac, spins to life in a high-pitched whine. I am told a little of you goes quite a ways, Mac says. You word-processing bastard. The prophet hisses, and they fall apart. They fall upon each other, writhing about on the worn floorboards in a terrible battle of ripping fabric, cracking plastic, broken incisors, saliva and blood. When they gaze upon each other, murder is never long out of their eyes. Bellero whispers to me, you call me a drunken son of a bitch? The prophet protests. Bluish-white sparks are jumping from Mac's RS-232 port. You don't stand a chance with me. Dispatch from the land of the dead, I, the prophet, have now created the world's first novella composed solely of consecutive dreams, 7 months of dreams, each night flowing into the next. The journey of life. What tripe? Where did these images come from? Perhaps they are the inevitable reaction to my many years of denying the unconscious. Certainly the path was blazed early on, the dreams of my youth. This is the travelogue. And then there's Nixon in Texas. Yes, what a concept. An alternate history, Republic of Texas, an independent and sovereign LBJ as president. It works. Nixon is the visiting head of state, here to establish diplomatic relations across the Red River, the international border, and we have the 1963 assassination in Dealey Plaza. That's when I saw the motorcycle guy. You just had left the computer for a bathroom break. They caught you outside the restroom, held you down, puncturing your face. That's when you learn God has been arrested. No, you computerized bastard. I already rewrote that section, but badly. What tripe? This requires a rewrite. Call in a script doctor. I hate you. Then we move on to the scene about the message issued by this new governor of Earth. God was wrong, violated universal laws, immoral acts including global flood, planned homicidal UFO invasion as described in the Revelation, people turning into insects. A quick check of the England confirms the reactions of the populace. Christian evangelicals go into a massive rapture frenzy. The planetary governor is suspected of Antichrist. And we'll give Clark a Jewish friend who will say, I'm still waiting for the first coming. Nice touch. Meanwhile, local Hare Krishnas continue to run their renowned East Dallas vegetarian restaurant affected by the announcement. The end is here, but no notes arrival. The prophet explains that only I can save the world. Keep reading the sacred text, Clark. The world depends on it. What tripe? Max says. This is more than the prophet can bear. He falls upon Max again, but Then water starts to gush forth from between the barn's worn, circa 1919 floorboards. The Prophet and Mac break off their combat to observe the artesian phenomenon. The water cannot be contained. The Prophet explains, through a broken tooth it wells up alive. The Mac spins its hard drive into another high-pitched what tripe, and again they fall upon one another, creator and creation, murder blazing in their eyes. So how does the world end? On television, of course. This is Reese Sloan interrupting your scheduled programming with another special report, and now, as America's sacrament war continues to quickly erupt in conflagrations of violence and the language of and themes of the classic sci-fi movie, The Omega Man, officials in the UN in New York are asking to what extent all of the citizenry of Earth will become involved in the global insanity. Stop the launches. Star Wars defenses are fragmenting dream-carrying missiles. Psychosis spreading across the planet. Repeat, stop the launch. Interception will fragment the dream-carrying missile. Now the issue is one of survival. Is this the conclusion of time, the end of the rational man? Is this the end of history, the swagger of science, the uber victories over the space and linear time? Is this the end of the age of the deity who... We were warned of judgment. The ancient tales of the withdrawal of the city of the deity may well be true. It's come now. It's come now. This is the noble misfortune, the weeping and gnashing of teeth. The deity has withdrawn. The evil dead are merging from the lagoons of flames, leaving us to our own devices. Where have we gone? Charlton Heston? Welcome again to my island. What a nice surprise. You have been gone so long I thought I might never see you again. How long has it been? A year, perhaps more? I would offer you a celebratory drink, but there is no time to waste. We must stay on schedule. You have arrived just in time for today. We start shooting the next installment of next year at Marienbad. What's that? I understand. Can you believe it has come to this? A seemingly normal morning, and then how could any of us know of the secret testing being prepared by the government alien conspiracy? How could any of us know of the wonder weapon that controls human behavior, both as a treatment and as a mass inoculation? The pre-launch countdown of the dream-bearing ballistic missile marked the first widespread sighting of the clock in the air, a precursor of the Flesh Coast horror. Science gone wrong, the ballistic delivery of a psychotropic solution to the malaise of the modern age, a test administered, a test gone horribly wrong, the death of today, the birth of a frightening next tomorrow. I must admit I am surprised to see you here, pleased but surprised. When you refused to run away with me, I thought I would never see you again. Now that you are back, things will move ahead once again. I have a confession. I lied to you about the urgency of keeping the movie on schedule. Next year at Marienbad has not been proceeding as well as I hoped. After your last visit, I attempted to move ahead without you. The results were not edifying. My first failed inspiration. No more next year at Marienbad. That's right. I decided there would be no more prophecy for me. No death of time and birth of a new religion. I would move on to a new creation, pure entertainment. That's the ticket. This may be the end of time, but people still want to see movies, and I have a lot of bankable cinematic ideas. Here's a one-sentence film treatment that came to me late one night after perhaps few too many martini. Middle-aged man discovers he is an extraterrestrial. I see him as the hidden king on a hero's journey. In the call to adventure, a time-traveling cowboy rescues him from certain death by aliens, helping him along on the adventure, and Bela O'Shield and his posse of Cicadians. Upon awakening, I realize that I had actually plagiarized Let Me Love You, my favorite movie of all time. Consider this one-sentence film treatment. A special newspaper press makes every story change reality. I dreamed it, a genuine creation of the unconscious. Later, I realized this idea had been done before, an old Twilight Zone episode starring Burgess Meredith. Next came Nixon in Texas, aka Plan 9.5 from Outer Space. The protagonist, the time-traveling cowboy, and Bela O'Shield return to the 1960s Duncanville, where they stumble into an alternate universe. Richard Nixon has won the 1960s presidential. He opens diplomatic relations with the Republic of Texas, which had closed its doors to the U.S. back during World War II. Nixon is welcomed with open arms by Texas President Lyndon Johnson, and they ride together in a parade in downtown Dallas. As they near the infamous plaza, a rifle barrel is spotted in the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository. But wait, what is that sticking out of the storm drain? And over there, that metallic flash in the grassy knoll? It's a conspiracy, all right, an extraterrestrial government conspiracy. Peeling back the layers, the protagonist finds that the extraterrestrials are preparing to stage a fake rapture that as part of a plan to take over the world. Oh yes, and God is going senile. Though in all fairness, that idea may be another leftover from Let Me Love You Too. After reading Farnham's Freehold, the classic 60s sci-fi plea for racial understanding, I envisioned a sequel based on an alternate version, Freeholden 2, Electric Boogaloo, aka Duke's Revenge. The castrated, drug-addicted Duke decides to return to the 1960s with his father and his father's girlfriend. He quickly resumes his racist ways and embarks on a reign of terror, castrating black men in retaliation for the loss of his own DNA delivery organ. One of my favorite concepts is God Bless You, Mr. Hitler, aka Born Again Further. Hitler fakes his death in a Berlin bunker, escapes to America, and starts a chain of dry cleaners. Then one day, the Lord speaks to him. He goes to a tent revival and is saved. He is a born-again Christian, a true believer. The sins of his extermination of 6 million dead Jews are washed away in the blood of the Lamb. His soul is dry cleaned by God. The born-again Führer turns himself in, and after a show trial in The Hague he is executed. But 3 days later, Hitler rises from the dead, the sky opens up, and God announces that Adolf Hitler has been reborn as the second coming of Christ. This is the fulfillment of Revelation. God, Jesus, and Hitler look on from their heavenly throne as the city of God descends to earth. Some of the roofs of the buildings in the city are adorned with crosses, others swastikas. I was actually rather pleased with God Bless You, Mr. Hitler. I should have moved ahead with that one. But by this point, I couldn't focus enough to rough out the shooting script. My mind was racing. The ideas were overflowing. Having just read Time's Arrow, another rousing Nazi tale, I thought of remaking some literary classics in reverse. Moby Dick, for instance. Captain Ahab emerges from the watery depths resurrected by the Great White. I turn my body to the sun, he says. What ho, Tashtego, let me silence thy hammer, O ye 3 risen spires of mine, thou crackle keel and only God-blessed hull, thou infirm deck and modest helm and pole-blunted prow, life, glorious ship, must ye then be reborn with me? Am I reattached to the first fond pride of kindest blessed captain? Away from thee I roll, thou all affirming and conquering wit. To the last shall you pursue me? Will you grapple with me? From hell's heart will you stab at me? For love's sake I flee thee. Float all coffin, hearse to one common pool, and since both can be mine, let me then tow to pieces, while still fleeing thee. Though tied to thee, thou damned whale, thus I retake my spear. For the rest of the story, Ahab flees the murderous beast as it chases him and his crew across the oceans of the world. And then there is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. In the opening scene, the monster comes out of the Arctic waste, boards a ship, and brings a dead Dr. Frankenstein back to life. Greetings, says, I join you, and in you I encounter the first human whom these eyes have ever beheld. Greetings, Frankenstein. The return to Europe, where an ungrateful Dr. Frankenstein flees the monster. In turn, the monster continues to do good deeds, restoring life to several dead bodies, and still the ungrateful doctor does not befriend the creature who saved his life. In the end, Dr. Frankenstein straps the monster to a table in his laboratory and kills him with electricity. The doctor then dissects the monster and implants the body parts into various cadavers, which his hunchbacked assistant buries under cover of darkness, spooky church graveyard. Townsfolk then exhume the cadavers and conduct rebirthing ceremonies. Voila, the dead are returned to life. The monster lives on, a sort of Christ figure for the scientific age. And then what? Then I have a really great idea, a dangerously great idea. What if I filmed the Bible, but in reverse? I call it El Bib, aka Biblin 2, Electric Boogaloo. In the beginning, God lived with his people in the holy city of Jerusalem. In those days, the home of God was among mortals. He dwelt with them, they were his people, and God himself was with them. He wiped every tear from his eyes. There was no death, no mourning, nor crying or pain. These things did not exist. The holy city had the glory of God and a radiance like a very rare jewel, like jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates were inscribed the names of 12 tribes. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city has 12 foundations, and on them are the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The city was laid out foursquare, its length the same as its width and height, 1,500 miles. The the walls were built of jasper, while the city was pure gold, clear as glass. The foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with every jewel. The first was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each of the gates was a single pearl. And the street of the city was pure gold, transparent as glass. The gates were never shut by day, and there was no night. The city had no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God was its light, and its lamp was the Lamb. The nations of the earth walked by the light, and the kings of the earth brought their glory into it. Nothing accursed was found within the city. Through the throne of God and of the Lamb flowed the river of the water of life. Bright as crystal, the water flowed through the middle of the city, of the street of the city. From his throne God spoke to his people, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I give water as a gift from the river of the water of life. Those who conquer have inherited these things. I am their God, and they are my children. They live with me in the holy city, and their names are inscribed in the book of life. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, their place is in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur. On either bank of the rivers of the water of life grew the trees of life. They bore 12 kinds of fruit, producing their fruit each month, and the leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nation. And in the center of the city grew the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God commanded his people, you may freely eat of the fruit of the trees of life and gather the healing leaves, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you of it you shall die. God commanded his people, you may freely eat fruit of the tree of life and gather the healing leaf, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall die. But then one day a man encountered a talking serpent, who asked, did God say, you shall not from a tree in the city? The man said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the tree in the city, but God said, you shall not of the fruit of the tree in the middle of the city, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. But the serpent said to the man, you will not die. God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the man saw the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, he took of its fruit and ate, and he also sold it to his neighbors and all the people of the city, and they ate. And the eyes of everyone were open, and they were naked. They began to penetrate one another's membranes, the men expelling their ectoplasm inside the women. This is the best of fruit of all, they cried. Let us gather this fruit and make of it a wine, and which we can drink ourselves, and sell what is left to the fornicators and the idolaters who live outside this. They immediately set themselves to labor, gathering the fruit for the wine presses. Then they heard the sound of God walking in the street. They instantly dropped the fruit they had gathered and stepped away from the wine presses. They began to wander off, acting they were stillness. But the people were unable to hide their sin, as they had gathered so much fruit that it covered the street, filled the gutter. Where did you get all this fruit? God asked. We picked it from one of the trees. Then God asked, have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? The people shook their heads and spoke in solemn tone. What have we done? After all, it was not us who created the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And with that, God instantly truth. He said to his people, because of what you have done, I place a curse upon you and all your descendants. No longer shall you dwell in the safety of the holy city. No longer shall ye bask in the light of the lamp of the Lamb. Then God said, see, my people have become like me, knowing good and evil. They must no longer eat the tree of life and live forever, like gods. Therefore I must drive them from the gates to the city into the danger and dark. So God turned his people out into the world, with the dogs and sorcerers, and fornicators and murderers and idolaters, and everyone who loved and practiced falsehood, and caused the holy city of Jerusalem to ascend into heaven. Now the people of God knew all about the lake of fire. This was the place of the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars. Their names were not written in the book of life, which lay at the bottom of the lake. As they stood along the shores of the lake of fire, God caused the flames to leap and the sulfur to smoke. The lake gave up the book of life and death, and Hades and all of the dead, great and small. They stood with the people of God before a great white throne. Books were opened, and rulings were read aloud by the officers of the court. All judgment of evil and wrongdoing was set aside. Satan was rescued from the flames too. He had been tortured there along with the beast and the false prophet, and they had been tormented day and night for the previous 1,000 years. But now they were released, reborn from the fire that had consumed them. A demon stood in the moonlight, and with a loud voice called to all the flesh-eating animals that walk the earth, "Come, gather for the great supper of Satan, to eat the white horse and its rider." Then the sky opened, and down came the horse and its rider, faithful and true, who in his righteousness judges and makes war. The eyes of the faithful and true were like a flame, and on his head a diadem, and he had a name inscribed that no one knows but himself. He was clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name was called the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, wearing fire linen, white and pure, followed him on white horses. They were from all the nations of the earth, kings, captains, the mighty, both free and slave, both great and small. From the mouth faithful, the true came a sharp sword with which to strike down the nation, and he was to rule them with a rod of iron. He was to tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God the Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh he had a name inscribed, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The beasts of the night the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered to make war against the faithful and true and the armies of heaven. But the rider of the white horse and his army were victorious. The beast and the false prophet fled the battlefield in the lake fire. Their armies were spared by faithful and true, and all the flesh-eating animals that walk the earth left the battlefield unsatisfied. And that's just the opening of Genesis. The creation story continues with all sorts of strange imagery, culminating with 7 churches, each sending an explanatory letter to John Patmos. Other Old Testament highlights: Paul is a follower of Christ, but he is doing terrible things with his miraculous powers. The living die, the sighted go blind, the able-bodied are crippled. Then God blinds him, and he goes out into the desert, where he gets his sight back in a miraculous fashion. Having learned the error of his ways, Paul gets a new name, Saul of Tarsus. He then goes from synagogue to synagogue, bringing dead Christians back to life. Of course, there is the story of the Son of God, who comes down out of the sky, descends into a grave where he dies, but 3 days later is returned to life by Roman soldiers who put him on a cross. God eventually causes the Christ child to disappear from Mary's womb, erasing the last sign of his existence. The New Testament story, Job, is a good one. A very rich man suddenly loses everything and simultaneously receives a direct communication from God. He is abused by his so-called friends and left to suffer on a garbage heap, but he still believes. Satan tells God that he believes Job will turn away from his beliefs if his wealth is restored. They make a wager, and Satan returns to Job much of his property. Job is rich again, though not nearly so rich as before. He still believes in God, and Satan loses the bet. So many wonderful stories to tell, like the time David used a sword to restore the head of a giant, who was so appreciative that he took his army away and left the Hebrews in peace. Flood story in which God dries up the rain and restores life to many dead bodies littering the landscape. A pillar of salt is turned into a woman. Moses brings his people out of the desert across the sea and makes them slaves in Egypt. He takes away terrible curses imposed by God and disappears back into the wilderness. Years later, he comes back to kill one of the Egyptians, then lives in secrecy. He eventually meets up again with the Hebrews as a baby in a basket on the Nile. The end times comes in the Garden of Eden when God takes away the animal skin clothing of Adam and they must wear fig leaves. Adam gives an apple to Eve, who in turn hands it over to a snake. God responds by turning Eve into a rib and planting her into Adam. Despondent Adam takes away all of the names of the animals. God turns him into dust. Then God takes away all of the animals and the dry land and even the light, leaving the earth without form and void. Amen. But no, I tell myself, this isn't right either. I am not a Hollywood-style director. I am a prophet. I must give my witness. I must continue filming next year at Marienbad. If only I could concentrate. I walk the beach looking for sea monsters and inspiration. I tried to force myself to write something inspired, always a bad idea. Here's something I came up with over the last Memorial Day holiday, watching the vacationers playing the bay. Sometimes I see a horizon beyond the horizon. It is a line in the sky exactly paralleling the one we all know of the waking world, but it is hard to focus on this idea, for below the waking world horizon I see one of the pale bikini creatures busily attempting to adjust her top. It is a heavy load for sure, for I see her adjust one side, then another, then reach for the middle as if to unhook and discard the whole thing. A kiss from an adjacent boy, though, and she is back at it, reaching around behind herself, adjusting the tie that binds. How can I think about important things like a second, unseen horizon when this pale bikini creature insists on this constant touch, adjusting, and this kissing? I was once young like that, but never so young that I had a chance to observe or participate in. Now I take note of a new development. The boy has walked away back onto dry land, and the white car of wakeful travel. The pale bikini creature is busy with something drawn close to her core. I am not sure what. Perhaps I could risk a quick peek through the binoculars, but no, this would likely prove a disappointment. My thoughts are surely more enticing than her reality, even a reality of busy breast adjustments and pretty red toenails dipped in wet sexuality. Now she strokes her blonde hair, a mermaid on the beach. This mermaid could take a swim in my unconscious. Check out the underwater road. Let her find the unknown treasure. Bring it up from the depths to sun on dock. And now drunkenness, the back and pickup. This is real fun. The pickup leaves with my mermaid, and the fishermen depart for secret honey holes in my unconscious. No telling what they may catch. But I guarantee it won't be pleasant. Only sea monsters down there, consigned to the frightful depths. Huge, bug-eyed creatures with glowing patches that move across the surface of their cold, slimy skin. They drift slowly along the bottom, among the cold Coke bottles and my failed, forgotten dream. The bay is deserted now, but I can't seem to recover my second horizon idea. It just looks like any old line where the world and sky meet. Perhaps the pale bikini creature was inspiring me to see the hidden secret world skyline. Now the music's gone, and I am alone with no worthwhile thought. The sun is low in the sky. Soon I can speculate on the orange glow, the embers of another dying holiday. Sometimes I see a horizon beyond the horizon. It's a mesmerizing concept to know. In my case, it's mesmerized me into recognizing the entirely new reality. The end is here. Conflagrations of violence, global insanity, the fragmenting dream-carrying missiles, psychosis spreading across the planet. The talking head on TV has it right. The issue is one of survival. Is this the conclusion of time? The end of rational man? Is this the end for history? The swagger of science? Is this the conclusion of our collective victories over space and their time? Is this the death of God? We have been warned of cosmic judgment. The ancient tale of the withdrawal of the city of the deity may well be true. It's here today. It's come now. In Love in the Ruin, Walker Percy prophesies these dread latter days of time. The feeling of the clank of the old historical machinery, the sudden jerking ahead of ourselves. The hydrocarbon is defunct. Vines are strangling Manhattan. Coyotes have the run of downtown Houston. The churches are empty now, abandoned years ago, shortly after the time of the great catastrophe, the fragmentation of the dream-carrying missile. Look over there, on the ocean boulevard. The stained glass of the church is shattered on the floor with the bird droppings. I'm told that the new Rome is in Cicero. Has it really come to this, the conclusion of all our yesterdays? I feel unchanged, and yet my countrymen are undeniably different. I see it all around me, the distortions and exaggerations of inferential thinking, delusions and hallucinations. I see their cognitive and emotional dysfunctions of perception, behavioral monitoring, affect, fluency and productivity of thought and speech, hedonic capacity, volition and drive. I don't bother trying to make sense anymore of their odd language and incoherent occasion. The word salad of disorganized speech, I believe the technical term is receptive aphasia. Nevertheless, I must admit it is rather entertaining. This is a language for New Age. I am incorporating it into my post-Holocaust film work. I think you'll like it. I see many delusions of jealousy and religiosity, seemingly organized around a central theme. Persecutory delusions are common. So is idealized romantic love and spiritual youth. Many people possess the conviction of having some great but unrecognized talent or insight, or having made some important discovery. Two men with a special message for it from a deity, too close to home. They're crowding in on my territory. The wild, to the sky, to the aerial clock. Cold hands of time are spitting the heaven. A slow wave shivers through the universe. My jailers don't even bother to report to work anymore. But there is good news. Now in these broken, derelict days after the end of time, it is possible to combine two opposites into a new whole. Are you familiar with William Burroughs' Nova trilogy? No matter. The idea is simple. create something new by combining something old and commonplace. This technique generates a creative product. Distressing tale from the Twilight Report. A Paraguayan physicist claims we shall journey not only through the cosmos, but through the fourth dimension too. We know his claim true, for today we are back from a time journey to 1979, bringing with us an explanation of what we saw and how it was completed. First, a warning: this operation requires extreme accuracy, as it is a difficult enterprise. It is based in part on mid-20th century experiments conducted by my grandfather, Jules Poe. These experiments were aimed at creating a new process of color photography. Brightly colored ribbons were tied to a leafless winter tree in the Poe family backyard in Waco, Texas. Double reversal film stock was exposed through a lens or prism. Somehow wires were crossed and time-space polarity was reversed. The developed film reveals a horizon beyond the horizon. I am caught, the psychic and constrained, snapped out of the last weekend of youth in 1979 and back to 1953 Waco and forward to outer space. I am spun into an elliptical orbit around the Circadian Scientific Post in Uranus, where they note of my grandfather's experiments. I focus on the heavy blue silence, and a slow wave goes through me. Beware, friends, the Joule effect is equal parts excitement and danger, just as you would expect when traveling beyond the outermost border, marking the back of the beyond. Only the adventurous should apply. However, the fourth dimension belongs to everyone who has the courage and know-how to come in. It belongs to you. So here is the entire 4-part process, precisely as it were. Part 1. You begin your voyage in the corpse house of the old newspapers. You fold today in with yesterday and type up the resulting script. When you read through newspaper, you typically see and absorb much more than you know. In fact, you absorb everything, but it is not easily accessible to you because it is on a level of a conscious understanding. The folding process establishes a metaphorical relationship between today and yesterday. You have assembled a script that, combined with the photos, forms a montage of time. You move yourself literally about without the frame of that montage occupying yesterday's news. You return to present time by traveling towards yesterday. You will do this many hours per day for several months, back as far as the news goes. Exhume old magazines and forgotten novels too. Poke about at the cadavers, bright yellow letters and dusty government reports. Make fold-ins and write scripts. Do it even with the photographs. Proceed to the closest studio of film. Here you will learn to have a talk with yourself in reverse at all levels. This is done by running the film and soundtrack in reverse. This is precisely the schematic diagram employed in the creation of El Bib. Picture Christ eating the Last Supper with his disciples. After this, reverse the film, turning satiety back to hunger. At first, the film will break into a run at the normal speed. Next, it drops into slow motion. The same procedure can be extended to other physical processes, including the expelling of ectoplasm. You are offended? No, not. You must move beyond your sexual prudery and reticence. Sex will be possibly the heaviest anchor holding you in the present time. Edit the resulting film into an endless loop on a single metal reel. This process results in a great circular movie, without beginning or end, birth or death. For full effect, it should be viewed in a circular theater and projected onto a circular screen. If you cut through the middle of the reel and view the individual frames, then you will find that the movie is actually the deity, a sentient being, realized in the form of a living movie from the back of beyond, whose precise center is any point in your life, and therefore totally remote and unreachable. Open the door onto the space-time continuum, and a slow wave shivers through the universe. Smoking is not allowed in the Strangers Rest Senior Center, but violations are rampant and generally overlooked during the weekly Meals on Wheels luncheon. Overlooked by everyone but Dwayne's wife, that is. That old shrew, he scowls. Doctor's orders, Dwayne. Roy says, "Remember, you ain't so young anymore." "Yeah, but Dwayne ain't the one with the bandage on his head," Toots remarked. "What's happened, Roy? You fall out of your recliner again?" Roy puts a hand to his white gauze he's taped to his forehead. "Why, this here ain't nothing you would know anything about," he remarked, "and I'm sure you're just dying to tell us. Since you're obviously curious, I will tell you. This here bandage is actually the protective covering on a solar panel for a sex machine." This solicits a combination of laughter and groan. "Why, sure," Roy continued, "if I didn't keep this here piece of manly hardware covered up, I'd be mobbed by beautiful girls. You ugly old coots wouldn't stand a chance. No smoking, Dwayne says. It's just another excuse to deprive me of one of life's few remaining pleasures. Dying with clean lungs is kinda like dying with $1 million in your pocket. It ain't going to do you any good. And besides, Roy, I'm 5 years younger than you. Let's get back to the subject. Toots says, if Daniel can pull it off, it'll be more than just a pocket full of cash for one man. The land deal could be good for the entire town. High prices tend to, hold on. He stops to count his dominoes. Wasn't I down 2 tiles, Harold? Like Dwayne, Toots always kept one eye on his tile, but the other eye he assigned to Harold Both, a quiet, unassuming man who had a seemingly impossible talent for making dominoes reproduce. I tried to play him once. I swear I was down to 1 or 2 tiles, and next thing I knew, I was looking down at 6, 7, maybe even 8 tiles. So was everybody else, everybody except Harold at it. No one could ever figure out how he did it. Toots counted his dominoes again, then gave Harold a skeptical glare. Harold, I don't believe I should have 6 tiles, do you? Hard to keep track sometimes, he allows. He doesn't look away from his own neatly arranged row of 4 dominoes. Toots just shrugged, but Harold's wife, Ima, isn't nearly as resigned. Yes, Mr. Bost has pulled another of his tricks. I know that look, she says in a quavering old woman's voice. He does it whenever he thinks he might lose. Ornery old man. I've lost plenty of times, Harold whispers, but that just makes Ima madder. You're always so sly with your old tricks and cheats, aren't you? Someday you'll get yours, Mr. Boss. Yes, you and all your ornery old men will get yours. Now, what was I saying? Toots asks. Oh yeah, land prices. Setting a high price is the only way to get a high price. And that's the only way to push up property values and increase your own tax revenue. Toots' taxes are sky high already, Cowboy Roy says. Most of us don't want to sell out, and we're going to stay here till we die. We'd rather have low taxes than land that's worth a bundle. We can't afford to be that rich. Values have definitely been going down, I remark. Real estate's in the tank, and that's where it ought to be, Dwayne adds. None of the land around here is worth anything close to what folks have been paying these days, let alone the $1 million Daniels is asking. Dirt ain't worth no more than you can make from the crops you can grow on it. We ain't had no cotton production around here to speak of in 20 years, so you can forget the big cash crops. All anybody does with land around here anymore is raise hay and run cattle. So what you reckon that makes Daniel's land worth? Roy asked. If I was in the market, I might give $200 an acre. Well, tarnation, Dwayne, Toots roars, almost knocking over his domino. Dirt's been selling for $20,000 an acre real regular now for several years, even if prices are down. They sure ain't dropped to no penny on the dollar. I remember one year sure came close. It sure came close. Roy says, cotton prices were so low, Mama and Papa just plowed the crop right back into the field. Yeah, I think that was back in 28 or 29. It was a bad year. Prices were low. No, we didn't plow the cotton under until the Depression. You're thinking of the big freeze, the summer when everything froze over. This catches my attention. You had a freeze in the summer? Yes, sir, Toots says. The weather was awful for months. We couldn't get out. When suddenly it got a whole lot worse. We had a big freeze right there in the dog days of August, Roy says, marveling at the memory. Everything froze over solid. I remember sliding around out there on the stock pond, the one at the old airbase. It was just awful. Killed the whole crop, everything in the field. We lived that year on nothing but butterbean and coffee. Well, don't worry about that. We're not going to be living on butter beans and coffee beans because land ain't going to sell for $200 an acre ever again. I hoped he was right. I hated butter beans, but I still like just about every other kind of food they serve at the weekly Meals on Wheels lunch, prepared by the women of the town from family recipes, some handed down by pioneer ancestors. The 2 tables spread consists of the kind of traditional Southern fare that can only be found in the country kitchens of iron-haired grandmas or at Sunday night covered dish dinner. I never missed the weekly spread where I'd load my plate with a big slab of pan-fried ham and side vegetables, green-flavored, with a shot of vinegar, green beans cooked to a muted olive army tint and glistening in bacon fat, and real hominy grits. It'll bring tears to my eyes. All for a $3 donation. Buck looks at my overloaded plate and smiles. Your wife a good cook, he asks. If she's got a recipe, I say, but I don't think you can find stuff like this in a cookbook. When we was newlyweds, my Ima couldn't boil water, Buck confides quietly, careful to make sure his wife 2 tables away isn't listening, but she learned quick enough, and I'm carrying around the gut to prove it. You just be patient, Toots says. She's going to learn how to cook those green beans and ham the way you like it. The idea of Allison cooking up a real southern meal is a cruel joke. Sure, she's spent more than half of her life in Texas, but she operates under the delusion that she is an East Coast transplant. Allison is a sophisticate marooned in a raw and spare land, perplexed, she claims, by all things Texan and Southern. Her specialties are Boston baked beans, Philly cheesesteak, and New England clam chowder, not grits and... I quickly finish dessert and break away from the domino players to work the room, as Roy likes to kid me. Although officially intended to benefit the town's old folks, the Meals on Wheels luncheon favored a local business and civic leaders my first month in the bureau. I even mentioned it in a lunch bureau review in the Northeast Extra. This weekly gathering is a sort of casual chamber of commerce mix where attendees don't feel obliged to exchange business cards. But of course we do. It's the best place in Stranger's Rest, perhaps all of the Texas 114 corridor, to pick up rumors and gossip. I've found that as long as I keep my notepad and pen out of sight, an hour or so of delicious home cooking and friendly talk will yield a week's worth of story. I make my usual contacts, the president of the bank. No, haven't heard from the feds in months. The sister of Brian P. Hamilton, professional golfing legend and Stranger's Rest most famous resident, next to Cowboy Roy, of course. The visiting Keller mayor, justice of the peace Hubert Skinner. On my way between tables, I notice a fair number of the old folks are drawn to a new offering, fuel samples of bottled water, free samples of bottled water, courtesy of Ozona International. An old man pokes a gnarled finger bone at the pyramid of plastic bottles and a cardboard cutout of the trademark Ozona cloud. The cardboard cloud has been given a flashing neon lightning bolt, which glints off the polished albino head of the Yo Ozona Man, registered trademark. Who has stationed himself behind the table. As I said before, it's part of a nationwide marketing study. The waterman explains, we're trying to determine what new products might appeal to various segments of the marketplace. The front door opens, admitting a hot whirlwind from the asphalt parking lot. It's the stranger with film crew in tow. He walks straight to me and whispers in my ear, What, him? I ask, incredulous. He's supposed to be the sinister Dr. Adolfo Morel. He doesn't look very menacing or dangerous or human. Adolfo Morel bears an odd alien countenance, smooth head, snow-white skin, blood-red lips and mouth, and black pupils and irises magnified to lurid proportions by the prism-like lenses of his glasses. He is average height, but frail build. His bones are like those of a bird, so delicate you could knock him over with a feather. He's supposed to be the mad scientist of the movie, I ask. I just don't know. The stranger is undeterred by my doubt. Dr. Morel is actually a character from the Society of the Purple Sunset. He explains he is inexplicably migrated into the waking world. He is the director of the Black Ops division of Ozona, here undercover as the Yo Ozona Man. He's offering free water, but don't drink any. It's just a ruse to introduce a new version of Fluoride 9 into the populace and create the world's first privately owned deity. Roy steps up to the table and examines the pyramid of bottles. I hear tell you're paying $10, and all we got to do is drink some of this water and fill out the form. Dr. Morel carefully adjusts the glasses perched on the bridge of his too small nose, runs a pale, dead hand over the bare pate, and gives his questioner an emotionless insect smile. Yes, it is, as you say, we're paying people to drink our water. The stranger motions to his cameraman and the microphone boom operator. Then he turns to me. For this scene, you are to attempt to claim a bottle and form, he explains. I'm not participating, I say. Don't worry, you don't drink it, but you'll need a bottle so you can have it analyzed. I won't. The stranger blinks in disbelief. Why not? He asks. There's still no incredible revelation. Be patient. We're not even done with the black backstory yet. Action. Today we're testing Fountain of Youth, Morel explains. This amalgamating beverage is aimed at members of select socioeconomic profiles age 50 and up. Samples are carefully measured. It is necessary to administer the correct mixture to the appropriate subject. In other words, rich rich old folks, the Strange said. Mark, now you pick up a bottle and examine the label, which features a sort of woodcut of Ponce de Leon discovering Florida. You're lying. I already told you I'm not participating, I say. Why not? I do not believe in the movie. The stranger looks at me in disbelief. How can you not believe? He asks. It's our movie. Not mine, yours. I don't believe in it. No one else will believe either. You are nothing like the old man in my dream. I am the stranger. You are a fraud. You're like a bad game show host. This movie is an extreme embarrassment. I don't think you know a thing about making movies. The stranger nods thoughtfully. Okay, we'll add your dialogue in post-production. Cowboy Roy sidles up beside me and rests a conspiratorial forearm on my... If you want to see a sight, just keep your eyes on Harold. I look over at Harold, who was still sharing a table with Buck and the mayor. What am I looking for? Check out that bone pile he's nursing along. He's outdone himself this time. Sure enough, he has a substantial stack of dominoes and now dominate the table. Must be 2 feet tall, I marvel. The stack is so tall, in fact, that its base stretched to the table's edge, tiles sliding over the precipice to the concrete floor. Harold is grabbing at the falling tiles, tossing them back onto the domino mountain, but this is a losing battle. In fact, all he has to show for his efforts is a domino avalanche and an angry wife. I'll teach you a trick or two, Harold bossed, Ima says, pelting him with plastic cutlery from the serving table. Tricks and cheat, that's all you ordinary old man. Harold stoically endures his wife's fury, ignoring the flying knives and combination fork spoons that rain upon him his domino mountain. Mayor Toots and Buck nervously watch from behind the ozona cloud, the neon lightning bolt crackling ominously. Poor Harold, Roy says. If only he'd use his powers for good. Roy and I go to Harold's assistance, picking up the dominoes that litter the floor, and then Dr. Morell arrives. Let's try a different game, he suggests to Harold. I can teach you one I eternally win. It's no game at all if you can't ever lose, Harold observes. It is logically possible for me to lose, but such an event has never occurred. Okay then, let's give it a whirl. 2 players. The dominoes are arranged in 4 columns, 8, 4, 2, 1. Each one of us may select as many tiles as we wish, but only from one column at a time. Whoever selects the final tile is the loser. Would you like to begin?